Welcome to Mourning, a podcast where we share our experiences around letting go of grief and learn to move with grace through mourning.
Our mission is to get curious about and change the conversation around loss to a more authentic one in our culture.
We are your hosts, Alyce Cristina
and Crystal Lee, two friends who connected through yoga and movement and ultimately found a deeper connection over our own parental losses.
We share how our experiences have informed us to live our lives more authentically, boldly, and in the now so that you can do the same. We believe where there is pain, there is transformation.
From the loss of a loved one to change in a career, a heartbreak, identity shift, and many other forms of loss, we walk this path together.
To discover the light within the darkness, we recognize the joy within pain and invite you to dive in with us as we share in the hope, laughter, and lightness of the mourning journey.
Join us for stories, interviews, and conversations that connect us as we explore the universal experience of loss that invokes the becoming of one's true self. So, Alyce, who are you? Tell me more about yourself.
My name is Alyce Cristina Vallejo. My overarching title would be movement artist and embodiment coach. In the way of human design, I am a manifestor generator. I'm also a Leo queen. I dabble in many creative endeavors from performer, artist, choreographer, educator, guide, late year leadership coach, yoga and dance teacher, and educator. And at the heart, with a capital A, of my being lives the movement of dance, my first true love. And this modality of movement has been the root and path to unearthing my purpose, my passion for life. And in crystallizing the essence of how, what, and where I teach about the 5 forms of movement that we all have access to. Physical movement, mental movement, emotional movement, energetic movement, and spiritual movement. I use coaching, movement classes, workshops, retreats, performances, and heart-centered practices to support, activate, and empower and awaken others to live in their true, integrated, and aligned, unique movements of one's own life. Yeah, I believe in letting go and letting God, to move forward through the unknown.
I love that. I love it. I was going to say, as someone who has experienced many of those things from you, your yoga, movement, your leadership, your coaching, I have to agree that you are all of those things and more. So
I thank you.
Thank you for being here and thank you for sharing. So what would you say your, morning call is, as in what has been your most impactful and profound loss that has called you to this space here?
Yeah, that stemmed 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, in July of 2020, when I unexpectedly lost my mom, Carolyn Jean Drury Vallejo. It was really sudden. It was the height of the pandemic. We are a close family. It's my sister, my oldest sister, 3 years and a day apart, myself, my dad, and my mom, and we live in Charlotte. And we were making the time to connect. The weekend, actually, that things started to really decline for my mom. We were visiting my partner's family in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and got a phone call from my sister, and she was like, "Hey, we're taking mom to the hospital." I was like, "Okay, we're coming home." Not really knowing. We just knew that she had gone from walking 20,000 steps every day, walking in the morning with my dad, and then a friend in the evening, to get outside, right? Because in the middle of the pandemic, that's all there was to do.
Right.
And to being like to not walking at all. And we were like, Mom, what's wrong? And she was complaining about some like soreness. Like when we hugged her, she was like, don't hug me too hard. And her ankles were really swollen, which I thought was weird. And I attributed it to being like dehydrated and maybe walking. I was like, okay, compression socks, lots of water, electrolytes, all the things that I feel like I know to do when I'm swollen. And um and nothing was happen, and she was just really fatigued. And so she doesn't like doctors, didn't like doctors, taking medicine, anything like that. So we were like, we need to go get checked out. She was admitted to the hospital on, I think that was July 12th, and spent almost a week in the hospital running all kinds of tests, from thyroid tests to, and finally to a full body scan. And they saw a spot on her liver. And then with biopsy, it became a spot on, it was actually on her pancreas. So at that point, I mean, we just kind of knew that one, pancreatic cancer is pancreatic cancer. The crazy thing in all of this is that a year and a half prior to my mom's diagnosis, her younger sister was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And her symptoms occurred. Um, there were a lot of physical changes in her. She started losing weight rapidly. Um, Lots of other, probably TMI symptoms. Maybe one day we'll
I don't
share.
know. Nothing's TMI here. It's okay.
Right? And she really had to advocate for herself because they were like, nothing, nothing, nothing. And then finally, similarly, she got a scan, and her spot was on a space. They found it on her pancreas. She had the Whipple procedure. My mom had been in New Orleans probably 3 months prior to all of this, or probably less than 3 months, maybe 2 months, um, helping her recover from her surgery, taking her to chemo and radiation. And then all of a sudden, my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she was discharged from the hospital on Thursday. It was the 16th of July, because the 17th was her and my dad's 50th wedding anniversary. And so we brought her home. Um, my sister had ordered a farm to table meal um, from a local chef in Charlotte. And so I went and catered to them, served them their meal, a very nice spread. We set up the table. We were supposed to be going to the beach a week later as a family to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary. We canceled that trip because her oncology appointment was the following Tuesday, her first oncology appointment. We Zoomed in. My dad took her, and the oncologist was like, okay, well, how stationary are you? And at this point, she was 85 to 90% stationary. And so she was like, we can't recommend any chemo or radiation because that will just deplete her faster. And her swelling had started to increase even more. So they were like, there's a chance it could be a buildup of fluid in her stomach. And it was that following Thursday, the 22nd, maybe, of July. I took my dad to the hospital to see if we could get her stomach drained, to see if that would um, kind of revive her in a bit, to give her some energy, so we could check back in with the oncologist. And we were making an appointment with an oncologist in Wake Forest, you know, totally My sister was a superhero when it came to research and looking up and finding resources and doing all the things. And um, I dropped my parents off at the doctor's, and I went to a vitamin store to find alkaline water that I had read would, could possibly make an impact, and buy vitamins, just like all the holistic things that I could thought of. And I got a phone call about 20 minutes later, and I just knew. I was like, this is not good. And they basically, the fluid buildup was not from her stomach, it was from her organs shutting down, essentially. And brought them home. That was the last time my mom left the house. And I sat with my mom at her kitchen island, and we had sherbet ice cream, orange sherbet ice cream together. And that's all she wanted to eat. And she just sat there, and I remember her saying, "I'm not really sure what's happening." And so I was just kind of going through the process and of like what the doctors just had basically said. She was like, "I want to sit in my chair." So we sat her in her chair, called my sister, was like, "You need to bring the kids over right now." And so all of my sister has three, I have one. And we brought them over, and we had them sitting around her in her chair. And I remember her looking at her oldest grandbaby, Eliza, and saying, "It's time for Mimi to go to bed." It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, never in my entire life has my mother ever said that, ever.
Yeah, she was walking like
And
20,000 steps before that.
yeah, and lively, and always wanting to help with the kids. And um, yeah, and then my dad got really mad at me because I was like, "Mom wants to get in bed." And he was like, pulled me aside and was like, "Do you know something I don't know?" And I was like, "I know. And she asked to get in bed, and we're terrified. We don't know what is truly happening." And there was a part of me that I was just like, "This is it. This is it." And we called my aunt so she could talk to my mom. We called my cousins. We called the priest. Wound up coming that evening, later, much later that evening, and reading her last rites. Um, it was pretty intense. I don't think any of us left her side, but she got in bed, and then the Friday morning, that was Thursday, Friday morning, she had a resurgence, and she wanted to get up, and I wound up being that caregiver that took her to the bathroom, and I think she showered. It was just so many things. We called hospice. Um, Needless to say, that was probably the longest 4 days of my life. um, and I've listened to other hospice nurses, and you these, I don't know what maybe they're like miracles of the death process. I was completely unaware of them. I was completely unaware of the process that your body goes through. We had my sister's, one of her childhood best friends, calling on the phone with us because she's a doctor in Georgia. And we were like, she's an ER doctor. And so she's seen it all. And we were like, she was like, "This is normal." We got hospice medicine, and I had a massage therapist, a lymphatic massage therapist come out, and they taught me how to like to move the fluid, to open those channels, and it was amazing, like in those moments, how lucid my mom became. Like she was able to form thoughts, and she didn't want to take medicine. So even when my sister was trying to give her the medicine, which in hindsight, I believe now is probably more for us, the living, than it is for the dying. As if you've never been around a dying person, it's not always pleasant. And Fast forward to early Sunday morning, um, and my mom was stubborn. I'm going to rewind real quick. My mom was stubborn. She fought, and it took a lot for all of us to be like, it's okay to let go. And there was one point I looked at my sister and was like, I can't leave here not knowing if I'm ever going to see mom again. And the hospice nurse was like, this could be the next month or 4 months. And I also knew that I could not do this for a month. And there was, yes, just some comfort in that, but also like, and then there's, the moments where I think my mom was having visions. And it was like our our previously deceased family that she was seeing, and there was a comfort in that. And then
What did
on,
that look like the visions?
um, she talked about two women being in the corner of the room, and to us, that was her mom and her oldest sister that, um, I guess mama passed away in 2000, gosh, 2016, I think, and her oldest sister passed in 2005 of inflammatory breast cancer. And yeah, so there was just like this, it was almost a warmth. It was in her bedroom. Again, we were all with her. The kids, we limited their access after a certain point for sure. Um, they, at least my daughter came back one other time, outside of that Thursday afternoon, or maybe two other times. It's hard to remember sometimes. And, and then Saturday was really, that evening was really difficult as, like, the death rattle had increased. My dad was freaking out thinking that she was choking. It was her lungs filling with fluid, and I made a playlist, and, like, I was messaging our family and, like, I messaged my Aunt Sharon, what was mom's favorite song growing up. I was asking my dad, what was y'all's favorite songs? So I have this whole playlist that I started playing for everyone, and, there were moments where she would sing to it. Um, she would look at my
Oh,
dad.
I love that.
Yeah, and there was, like, a moment where she looked at him on that Saturday night and said, um I love you forever with no condition. And that was, like, always her motto, unconditional love. I know, and it was just, like, the the tone in her voice, it was like she was 19 years old again when they got married.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's so just gorgeous.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful, it's like, again, the only way I know how to describe my experience of death and, is in its parallel to childbirth, right? It is a miracle in and of itself, how we enter the world as much as how we exit the world, and it's as beautiful as it is traumatic.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, yeah, and
I mean, there it's interesting because they are opposites, but they are so similar.
so similar. It's wild, and, um, again, she wanted to get up, like, that Saturday night, and at a certain point, I was like, "I can't get her out of bed anymore because if I drop my mother." I was like, I could not live with myself. It was like, "This is not happening." The woman was so stubborn, she was so mad that she couldn't get up to use the bathroom. However, the woman was so strong-headed, she never used the bathroom, not even after she passed. And usually that's like a normal bodily, there is some kind of, like, bodily release. Not her, not her.
Interesting. That is so interesting.
You
She
know,
was like,
and
"I'm in control." all the
She
way past the end.
Yeah, she was like, "I'm not doing it. I'm not." And so it was early that Sunday morning, and we were exhausted, and she had a book, Jesus is Calling, and it was like a book that she referred to through the whole past year. She was going to a Bible study with a group of neighborhood women, and I just picked it up and I opened the book to that day, and literally the first words of the passage were, "It's okay to let go."
Oh my gosh. Oh, I have chills.
Yeah, and so I read that in its completeness, and then my sister read one, I read another, and just like we kind of were just going through the passages, and there was just everything that we all needed to hear in that moment was right there. And then we were like, it was about 4 in the morning, and we were like, this is it. This is it. And we were around her, and she took her last breath, and it was interesting. I guess for me, like after that, I did not do well with seeing her lifeless.
Yeah. It's hard. It's so
It is
hard.
very hard. And there was one point I went and had my breakdown. I like just lost it. And I mean, it was also like adrenaline, physical exhaustion, emotional, just complete overwhelm. And I had my breakdown, and I curled up on the couch with my partner, and I felt really warm, and like felt like I couldn't breathe for a while. And
Yeah.
I
It's
had
like a
this.
full panic attack.
Yeah, it was, and I had this sensation of just my heart breaking, like the
Oh
physical
no.
sensation, and I also just felt
Yes. It
this
feels like your heart is physically breaking.
physically breaking, and I had this sensation though around the outside of my rib cage that there was just something was catching all of these pieces of my heart, and I once I caught my breath, I passed out on the couch for a while, and then all of a sudden, I guess it was a funeral home. I don't even know who it was. They came to get my mom's body, and it was insane that like as soon as my mom's physical body left their home, I woke up. And it was like that warmth that I had felt for the last few days um was gone. And it was like her almost felt like her spirit was gone, but it was like gone in a sense of like, okay, I have to be human now. I have to put one foot in front of the other. I Then my sister had her complete breakdown, um, hyperventilating. I think she even threw up several times. Like it was that, and like in that moment, like I knew exactly what to do. I had to get on the phone and make phone calls and like check on the kids and all of these things. And yeah, it was almost as if my ability to live kind of was restored in that moment, which was so, yeah, it was weird and nothing like I had ever experienced before. And then the next couple of days, it was a whirlwind. She was supposed to go to a doctor's appointment, I think in Duke or Wake Forest that Monday, or no, it was going to be a virtual. And so the doctor called, and we were like, I said, I tried to get through to your office to let you know that my mom passed yesterday. And they were like, what? I mean, everyone, even hospice, they were just like, just blown away at the swiftness of it all.
Yeah. That was going to be my question for you. Is it sounds like this was over what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks max, 2 weeks?
I think 3 weeks from the time she went to the hospital. Yeah, she went to the hospital on July 12th and died on the 26th.
Yeah, I mean, that's so quick, you know? I mean, it's still, at least I, we can talk about this more, but like I consider that sudden, you know, like you don't have time to prepare really at all.
There was
You know, it's not
nothing
like right
prepared.
here in this moment,
Yeah, I
but there's
mean,
nothing to prepare in 3 weeks.
no, and I mean, much less, I think we were all trying to digest that my mom had pancreatic cancer, right? Like, and our experience, we've had plenty of experience, unfortunately, with cancer in our family. And um, I said my mom's oldest sister passed from inflammatory breast cancer in 2005. Many years prior, their oldest brother passed away, but from lymphatic cancer. Gosh, in the early 90s. He was only 43. And so all four of my mom's siblings, well, there's four altogether, excuse me. So three, they've all had and died from cancer. And so, yeah, so we're in this, like myself, my sister, my cousins, we're all like, what is it? Like, this is crazy. Where my cousin Amanda, I remember her calling and be like, I'm about to go Aaron Brockovich on Bath Street, which is where they grew up, right? In New Orleans. And we're like, okay, they played in floodwater. Like, what was in it? Like, because at this point, and we've all gone and gotten genetic testing, had everything surveyed, and I've had my own scare with having a lump in my breast. So I get a mammogram every year now. And, you know, um, my testing came back slightly different than my sister's. So she's doing extra testing. It's just like, but for me, there was nothing. There's no genetic consistency, and none of those cancers are correlate except for pancreatic cancer, which is what my mom and Aunt Sharon had.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah. But I mean, to your point, I mean, I feel like this could be a whole podcast episode on its own, but it's like, what's in our food? What's in our water? What's in our clothes? What's in our whatever? We
What we
might be
put on
taking
our
a rabbit hole. So, yeah.
skin, everything.
Yeah. What's in our products? I know. I hate that. Um, I mean, obviously, this is your mother. Like, this is the person that gave you life and breathed life into you. And, I think I'm always careful to like compare losses because I think all losses are horrible. I don't want to be like parental loss is worse than this other loss or whatever. But I do believe that, your parents or our parents define us, no matter, even if we have a complicated relationship with them, whether we're close, whether we're not, like they still define us. We are part of them. We are genetically bound. And so I just imagine that, like, I don't know. I'm just like, it's your mother. Like, I feel like, I'm sure you feel like that's why it feels so profound, because this is like the woman that shaped you, right?
Absolutely. Overall, my relationship with my mother, I'm very lucky, was top notch, right? There's nothing that could have compared it. And she was like the woman that spoke all of our language. Like, she spoke my language, she spoke my sister's language, she spoke my dad's language. And so that, like, on the other side of it all, has been um probably one of the most challenging things, is to learn how to speak their language, like, even though it's my dad and it's my sister, like, to speak each other's language, because she was really the one that could do that for all of us. And,
So yeah, it
um
sounds like she was like the thread
yeah,
of the family, like the
absolutely.
kept everything. Yeah, yeah,
And even when she didn't, she did. And it's like, or like, we're off in our own little world. And there were many times that my mom and I did not agree on things. Um and usually, in that space of the thing that, one of the greatest things that she taught me is unconditional love, right? And for a long time, I don't think I really knew I couldn't I didn't love unconditionally. I didn't love myself unconditionally. I didn't love others unconditionally. And it wasn't until I had Amelia that I I got it. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna love this kid no matter what."
Well, I know who Amelia is, but tell us who Amelia is, even though I
Amelia
know.
is my 10 going on 20. No, she'll be 11 in December, December 1st. Um, yeah, my fifth grader. Many titles, many roles. She's an artist. She is a um, spirited, lively, keeps me on my toes child of mine. I look at her still. I'm like, oh man, you're mine. I made you. Um,
Yeah, how has um like I mean losing your mom, like how has it, I'm sure we could talk about this for like hours, but changed or informed how you mother like since losing her?
oh my gosh, huge. I mean, well, and my mom was a huge part of our lives when Amelia was young. Her dad and I separated. I was all of a sudden a single mom. Um, I couldn't afford to keep our house that we were in. We moved in with my parents for a period of time until I got on my feet. And my parents were just a huge part of Amelia's life and a huge part of my sister's kid's life, just always there, always ready, always wanting to babysit or have them spend the night and um, take them places. It's such a special, special role. And so the process of parenting really shifted for me because I couldn't guarantee anything. In my mind, her mom lived to be 94. My great grandmother, excuse me, my mom's grandmother lived to be 98. So there's generations of women in our family that have these expansive, long lives. And then all of a sudden, my mom's 69 and dying. My mom's youngest sister was 67. It's just our aunt was 53 maybe, and our uncle was 43, so it's like during the process, I never sat down with Amelia and told her that Mimi was dying. I'm pretty sure she found out leaving their house after like maybe it was the first time she was over there on that Thursday, and one of the kids was like, Mimi's dying. And I was like, "Oh god," like, I don't think I had even said that to myself.
You like, yeah, you couldn't say it out loud and like
Yeah, I mean, it was
so
probably in my head and it was in my body, but I hadn't
to
said
put
it
the
out
words out
loud.
there is so hard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so and I remember Amelia went to Kinder Morn, which is an amazing resource for parents that have experienced the loss of a child, for children who experiences the loss of a sibling or someone very predominant in their life. It's an amazing organization, and I highly recommend it. Um, Amelia saw Miss Kayla, one of the therapists over there, for pretty consistently for a year afterwards. And one of the first sessions, I never made her talk about it if she didn't want to. And one of the sessions, she came out and was like, "Do you want to share anything with me?" And she was like, "Yeah." She was like, "I forgive you." And I was like, "Oh, oh, okay." I was like,
Okay.
"For what? Please enlighten
Sure. Yeah.
me.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please elaborate.
I'll
Yeah.
take the forgiveness." And she was like, "You didn't tell me that Mimi was dying." And she said that that was really hard for me. I felt like you were keeping it from me. And it's so like, and I've played this in my head over and over. And it's so funny because I have often had the feeling growing up like I'm the last person to know like when it comes to our family. And I think that in ways that my parents, because I don't know, softer at heart and I take things on and they knew that about me, but they also would keep things from me. And it was also very hurtful because I was usually the last to know. And I mean, maybe I was just like loofy doofy, like airy, and like making my fire bigger or something. I don't know. Where
Well, no, I
maybe
think
it was
you
said
know,
in,
like you're,
I mean, I'm just holding myself accountable because I could be like that too. And maybe it was said in front of me and just didn't really like land. Um,
well, but also I think you're an empath. And so like you do, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you take on people's emotions probably. So maybe they were like, we don't want to add to that. I mean, who knows,
Yeah,
right?
potentially, yes, and there, it was a play on both it's not all my parents' fault. I
Right. It's
definitely
like
and
takes two sides.
yeah,
Sure.
absolutely, and then, like, here in this moment, like, I did the exact same thing to Amelia, and that was, like, really and I was just like and the fact that she could articulate that not only did I do my best in that moment, and she forgave me, and she said, "For a little while, I was mad at you." And I
Yeah.
just remember being
And
like
that's so honest.
so honest and so beautiful. And, and then it's like, Amelia, here she is. She was 7 at the time. Yes, 7, almost 8. She lost my mother, then she lost her father's dad, so her grandfather, and then she lost Aunt Sharon, like, all within a year. And as
Yeah,
a
it's a
7
lot.
yes, like, and
It's a lot for anyone, but for a 7 year
for a
old. Yeah.
7-year-old to lose these people that are so close to you and have made such a big impact on your life already, um, it was devastating, and so here I am as a mom, like, she was having nightmares and bad dreams about losing me, and I can't guarantee that she's not. I can guarantee that she is at some point,
Right.
and so yeah, and
Yeah.
so what is the conversation that we have now? And I have to one, in the integrity of how I want to mother and parent is be honest and have this say, "Hey, I can't. You may lose me tomorrow." And what matters is how and what you do with that loss, right? Which is like where we are right now and in taking these experiences of loss and using them to inform how I want to live, right? Because my mom wouldn't want me, my teacher, Suzanne Conrad, with Light Year Leadership, I had a conversation with her, and I will never forget this. She defined grief as getting in the grave with someone, burying yourself, and mourning as like standing outside of the grave, recognizing it and honoring it, right? And celebrating,
Right. Like not dying with the person
yeah, and
also.
celebrating the
Yeah.
legacy of who they are to you and how you can live fully in their honor.
Yeah. And I think to your point or her point, like especially in those acute, like the immediate aftermath, like there is a time where and maybe it's appropriate to be in the grave with the person. Like you feel like you're gonna die for a minute, and it's okay to let yourself be that sad. But to your point, it's like, how are we moving forward, which we're talking this while we're here. How are we moving forward with that grief versus just like dying along with it? And how are we answering the call, the morning call, of like taking what we've learned from our loss, still remembering the person, like they don't go away. We are, especially, family, like we are their DNA and they're ours, and they'll always be a part of us and they'll always go with us. So how do we move forward even without them, but still with them spiritually or whatever you believe? So yeah, I think it's good that you're being honest with her, because you're like, sorry, I can't guarantee that I'll be here forever. but also teaching her, like using it as a teaching moment. Because this applies to all hardships, right? Like, so even, I'm not comparing grief to like being made fun of on the playground, but it's like, if something were to happen, like how would you deal with that after the fact, So I think that's really smart.
Yeah, because I mean, it is it's a constant conversation. Every day is new, right? Like if you distill loss down, like we lose different versions of ourselves day to day, and I don't think that looking back, like I've really been able to tap into this experience of loss and look back and mourn deeper the people that I've lost previously. I've been able to mourn past relationships that I didn't allow myself to mourn. And so, and mourning is like, yes. And I think a beautiful point that you touched on was like in learning how to move with the grief, like definitely physically afterwards, I mean, you know me, others don't. I'm a natural born mover. Like I dance. I embody movement. I am movement. Um, it is like was basically my first form of communication to the world, right? Like I didn't feel comfortable using my physical voice, so I danced. And and all of a sudden I didn't feel like moving. Like I wanted to curl up in my closet and stay there. And I was terrified of moving again. Like it took me a significant period of time to get back to my yoga practice, to get back to my dance practice. And that was surprising. And what I've discovered in that, and when I did have the urge to create again, it was to create in a capacity to give this experience of loss and grief a voice. It was to to cultivate a conversation around like how we as a community navigate loss. And that's and how we like and what I've really seen about it is like and gets me excited is like how we dance with it. Like I've gotten to know my grief. I sit with it like it's my best friend because I
Yeah,
also
move
know
with
that
it.
huh?
Like move with it, like it's physically there with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so it's like and I mean, even having this conversation over the past 2 weeks, or maybe even 3 weeks, I have felt really weighted with a wave of grief. Um, and it's almost felt me like, again, I've had those feelings of not wanting to move. And it's like, and I let it come, and I let the stories build in my head because I'm human, and then I have these tools. I have tools from light year leadership, from my own movement practices, from um, past experiences that inform me of really being able to sit and lean into the experience and dance with it. Thank you for joining the Morning Call podcast. Our intention is that you found a nugget of hope, inspiration, connection, or all of the above.
If you seek to dive deeper with the Morning Call community, email us, subscribe to our page, leave a review, and fill out our survey.
We want to hear your stories and widen the conversation to support and empower our grief experiences as we collectively become our true selves.
Find us and subscribe on all streaming platforms, YouTube, and at Morning Call Podcast on Instagram. You can also email us at morningcallpodcast@gmail.com.
This podcast was edited by Alyce Cristina Vallejo from Amelia Creative Media.